Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel. So I have been seeing on Book Talk a lot of discourse around young adult books and whether or not adult readers should be reading young adult books. I think that this discourse is kind of wild. While there are books that are meant for teens, meant for younger readers, I still think that they can and should be read by adults. A lot of them still have messaging or stories that are just important to hear or is just good in general, and can still be enjoyed by adult readers. And so this stack here are a bunch of young adult books that I have read and really enjoyed that I think you can still enjoy as an adult reader. The first book on this stack is We Are Not Free by Tracy Chee. This is a book about teenagers in the Japanese internment camps during World War II. Each chapter or section kind of follows a different teen in the group, and it really gives the perspective of what it was like during World War II before they went into camps, what life was like in camps and how different camps kind of treated the Japanese. I really enjoyed this book. Writing style and structure is incredibly unique. Each point of view has its own unique writing style. There's one character in here who speaks entirely through verse, and then another character has a bunch of like art and drawings on his pages. This book has a ton of mixed media. It covers a lot of perspectives that aren't typically talked about in at least US history classes. So I really enjoyed it. I think it's very enjoyable to read as an adult. It's very important for people to learn about, even as an adult. Some of these chapters were really hard to get through just because of the topics and events that are discussed. Since each character has a unique writing style, if one character's style isn't really working with you, please just push through it because you won't be stuck in that style for long, and the story and perspectives are very important. The next book on this list is Sadie by Courtney Summers. This is about a teenage girl who runs away, and a podcast is kind of hosted trying to determine her whereabouts, and it really looks into the case. I thought this was a very interesting thriller. It's very reminiscent of Listen for the Lie, if you've read that one. This is more of the young adult version of it. Similar to Listen for the Lie, there are podcast segments in here where you're reading the podcast script, and I thought it really helped with the storytelling. I think that this had a very true crime podcast vibe, and it was just very fast-paced and very entertaining. The next book on this list I currently can't find. I think I lent it out to somebody, but it is the Naturals series. The Naturals is about a group of teenagers who all have these very unique special abilities. So they are recruited by the FBI to help solve some cold cases. I thought that these books were really, really interesting. They were also fast-paced. They were very unique. They didn't feel like they were YA books, at least in my opinion. I'm not a huge thriller reader, so you might not feel the same if you are. The book series feels very reminiscent of Criminal Minds, but with a group of young kids. It focuses a lot on behavior and profiling, similar to the way that Criminal Minds would do it. I thoroughly enjoyed it. This was probably one of my favorite reads from last year. I still recommend this all the time. Each case I found was very intriguing, very interesting. I didn't really see the plot twists coming for the most part in all of these books. I completely recommend the Natural series. There are 4 books in the series, but they're very, very good and very easy to fly through. The next book on the list is Patron, Saints of Nothing by Randy Ribay. This book is about a Filipino American who finds out that one of his cousins in the Philippines was murdered. So he goes over to the Philippines to try to uncover details about his cousin's murder. This really digs into Duterte's war on drugs. I found this to be incredibly important. I think it accurately captures the children of immigrant experience, where you don't really feel in touch with your heritage and you're kind of torn between feeling American or your cultural identity. This had a ton of Filipino culture in it. It had a lot of foods, references, social, political, historical complexities. This left me overwhelmed with a feeling of grief and kind of homesickness, as opposed to just devastating, overwhelming sadness. I think it was really well done and a good read for people who don't know much about the Philippines. I think it's a great kind of introduction into some of Filipino history. The next book on this list is a little bit obvious. I feel like most people have probably read this or something in the series before. I am talking about Sunrise on the Reaping by Suzanne Collins. The Hunger Games is a very famous, very well-known young adult dystopian series, and Sunrise on the Reaping is the most recent release. This one is actually my favorite out of the 5 in the series. I thought it was a really, really good bridge between the prequel, Songbirds and Snakes, The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, and the original Hunger Games trilogy. This really emphasizes the effects of propaganda and the story behind the story. It has elements of rebellion, elements of government control, and Suzanne Collins just does a really good job of developing this world and has a ton of political commentary throughout the entire series. I am just showcasing Sunrise on the Reaping because this one is my favorite out of the 5. In a similar story, a lesser known young adult novel is Surviving Antarctica Reality TV 2083. I think this is targeted toward the younger side of the young adult age range. If you've never heard of Surviving Antarctica, it's a book that was released maybe 5 or 6 years, I think, before the Hunger Games series. It's about this government that decides to put children in a reality TV show where they need to complete this very dangerous expedition. In this dystopian world, education is only done through watching TV. Instead of having lectures and history classes, they instead have adults who are put into a big historical event and forced to relive said event. So one of these seasons was they put them in the middle of the Civil War, and people were assigned either the Union or the Confederacy, and they had to go and kill each other, and you would watch these citizens of this dystopian nation kill each other on reality TV. And that was how the public and the kids of that time learned about history. And so to grow viewership and kind of have a spin-off of that series, they decided to make a spin-off where they put teenagers who had just finished their schooling into this competition where they had to relive the expedition to Antarctica. So these 5 14-year-olds had to replicate Robert Scott's South Pole expedition from 1910. They were dropped off on the edge of Antarctica and given the same supplies that Robert Scott had during his expedition and sent on their way to try to reach the South Pole. They had to try to reach it in, I think it was 5 days. The producers were constantly watching the entire time, and any of the big events that happened during Robert Scott's expedition, the producers rigged to happen to these kids. It's incredibly reminiscent of the Hunger Games. You're watching these kids in a likely deadly scenario, because in the adult version, the adults would die all the time. So in the kids version, it is expected that some of them might not make it to the South Pole. The writing in this book is very YA. You can tell it was written for children, but in my opinion, this actually helps and benefits this book, because it helps to emphasize just how immature these kids are and how dangerous it is for these people to be in this scenario. I really enjoyed this book. This book was a reread for me that I did this year. I used to love it in middle school. I reread this book a ton, and I just reread it this summer and found that it really held up, in my opinion. The next book on the list is The Iron King by Julie Kagawa. This is book 1 of the Iron Fae series. The Iron Fae series has 4 books in it and 2 spin-off series. I truly recommend the original series. I don't really think the spin-off series is necessary. The Iron Fae series is another series that I used to be obsessed with growing up. I read them in high school, and I think that they are very classic 2010s feeling fantasies. In this book, Megan Chase is a girl living in our world, and as she turns, I believe, 16, she starts seeing things. She goes home and finds that her younger brother Ethan has been kidnapped by a weird, boogeyman in the closet. She doesn't know where they went, what it was, or how they got there. She finds out that her best friend Puck is a fae and that he is from the fae world. And so he takes her into the fae world, into the fairy world, to try and rescue her younger brother. She meets this man Ash who wants to take her prisoner and kill her, but he decides that he will let her save her brother first before she is taken prisoner. I reread this last year and I thought that this series really held up. I loved all of the characters. I think that they're just very entertaining. I get very attached to them. It might be the nostalgia, but I think that Megan is a very headstrong female character. I think she's really strong, very independent. This book also has an incredible slow burn love triangle in it, if that interests you. I absolutely adore the series. I feel like more people need to be talking about this series. I never really heard anyone talk about it growing up, and I still don't hear anybody talking about it as one of their nostalgia series. And I think more people need to talk about this. More people need to read it. More people need to talk about it. I absolutely love this series. 10 out of 10. I absolutely recommend. The next book on the list is They Hate Each Other by Amanda Woody. This is a YA gay romance. This is a dual POV gay romance. I thought that this had incredible tension. It's rivals to lovers, fake dating. I absolutely love this. It's such an easy read. I thought that this was incredibly cute. I think more people should read it. The next book on the list is True Biz by Sara Novic. This book takes place at a deaf boarding school. It follows 3 different POVs. One is Charlie. She is a deaf student who is transferring into this school from a public hearing school. Austin, he is a deaf child of deaf parents, so he is kind of the school's golden boy. And then February, she is the headmistress of the school. February is a child of deaf parents. She's a coda, so this book has great representation for the different types of people who could be using sign language. Writing style and structure in this was incredibly unique. The way that dialogue is written in this book replicates the way that it would be shown in sign language, and I absolutely enjoyed this book. There's a ton of little inserts of sign language so that you can kind of learn a little bit about the language, the history. There are little diagrams to even kind of show a few signs and teach a few signs. The representation of deaf culture was absolutely amazing. I do think that the story, especially the ending, isn't the strongest. The ending was a bit far-fetched, but I think that the deaf representation and the deaf culture that you get from this is worth the read. And then the last book that I have on this list is Heartstopper by Alice Oseman. This is a graphic novel series. There are currently 5 volumes out right now, but a 6th and final one is being released next year. This is about 2 boys in high school. I don't remember what British people call it, but 2 boys in high school, Charlie and Nick, and it's about them developing their relationship, falling in love, and Nick kind of discovering his sexuality. This book is a little bit different from everything else on the list. I think everything else on the list I enjoyed as a reader entirely. This book I didn't enjoy as much as everything else on this list, but I do think it is a read that you can still get into as an adult. Reading through this, I enjoyed it in the sense that I read this as kind of Nick or Charlie's older sister. Like, I felt very protective over them, and I really liked watching them grow into themselves and with each other. So my reading experience was a little bit different for this one compared to some of the other books on this list, but I do think that this, that if you're into graphic novels and just want something cute and easy to read, Heartstopper is a good series to read. That was everything on my list for young adult books for adult readers, but there are a few young adult books and series that I want to read. So some of those include Legendborn. I believe this is a King Arthur retelling. This is currently still being released. I believe there are 3 out right now and 1 more to come out. Legendborn, I've heard, is a really good series. A lot of people have enjoyed it. Another one is The Infernal Devices by Cassandra Clare. This is in the Shadowhunters universe. I used to read the Shadowhunters books when I was in high school, and I really, really enjoyed those. I would have included the original series on the list, the Mortal Instruments series on this list, but I do want to reread them first because I haven't read them since high school. So I want to reread them and see if they still hold up as an adult. But after I do that reread, I want to go into the Infernal Devices. I'm not really sure what the Infernal Devices is about. I think it takes place in London or something. Maybe that was one of the other trilogies in the Shadowhunters universe. But I do know that this is the most popular series in the Shadowhunters universe, so I'm very curious about it and I really want to read it. Then next on this list is Scythe. Scythe is by Neal Shusterman, I believe. Scythe is a dystopian trilogy. I believe it takes place in this dystopian world where people don't really die, and so there are these teenagers that are trained to kind of kill people to help prevent overpopulation. I don't really know much more other than that. And then the next 4 series on this list, I don't know anything about. That would be This Woven Kingdom by Taherah Mafi. I don't even know if this is a finished series. Okay, there are currently 4 books in this series, but it looks like there might be a 5th book getting released next year. I don't know what this is about. I am pretty sure it's inspired by Persian mythology. I've seen a ton of people talking about it, so it just seems like a really good time. Then we have Entangled with the Fae by Tessonja Odette. Wow, I hope I probably butchered that. But this series is a bunch of Disney retellings. Other than that, I don't really know. I've only seen one YouTuber talking about this, but it just seems very interesting, seems very fun. I am a big Disney person myself. Also on my young adults to be read is An Ember in the Ashes by Sabaa Tahir. Again, don't really know what this book is about, but I believe this has 4 books in the series, and I do think this one is completed. This series, like This Woven Kingdom, has a ton of hype around it. I've seen a bunch of people talking about it, and it just seems like a good time. And then finally, we have the Infernal's Air duology by Tiffany Wang. I just saw a TikTok of her trad published covers, and it was absolutely gorgeous. In that TikTok, she said that this was for fans of Avatar: The Last Airbender and something else that I can't really remember at the moment. And I am a big fan of Avatar: The Last Airbender, so, you know, it already had me hooked. But with that, that is the end of this video. If there are any YA books that I didn't mention that you think I should read, please leave them in the comments down below. Let me know if you have read any of these that I did mention, if you liked them, if you didn't like them. If you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!